and thank you for tuning in to this Reality Transurfing TV podcast. I am here with Xavier Waterkane and Jonathan Ludwig. We might have another guest on, but for now, we are just going to get started, and we have a few interesting topics to go over today. But the first one, I am going to, I guess, ask you guys to help me break it down. What is transurfing and what is transurfing not? So the reason that I am curious about this is obviously everything that has been transpiring lately in the world with the virus and the whole racial conflict here in the US. As transurfers, we typically shy away from massive swinging pendulums, especially ones that are, perpetuated by the media. And for some reason, the coronavirus one was pretty easy for me to disengage from. But this racial one, I felt like, okay, so I'm a transurfer and I have all these insights and tools and this ability to use these concepts and sort of form my own layer of reality. And I can disengage easily from anything that I deem non-beneficial to me and my reality. But then there was this thing inside of me when this whole racial thing started to play out that I was like, God, is this kind of irresponsible for me to disengage from this one? Are there some pendulums that are worthy and should be fed energy for the sake of, even if it doesn't happen, but the sake of at least attempting to find a solution if there is a perceived problem? And I know this all comes down to interpretation, because some people would say that it's really not a problem, right? From a really stepping back and looking at it from a more distant perspective, or sort of looking at it from a more narrowed perspective, like what the media is presenting to us right now. So it's still relative, like how big of a problem it actually is. But as an American, I feel like, for me at least, I could see how some other people in the world would maybe think that it wasn't really that big of a problem, simply because they're not involved or their exposure to it is minimal. I can imagine places like Iceland and Northern Europe and, other more homogenous kind of places, maybe racism really isn't something that people understand, but I understand it. Like, I can see the people in my country sort of, at ends really, and tired and suffering and all that stuff. So is it transurfing of me to, do I get involved? Do I not get involved? And obviously I got involved, right? I made the video that I posted this morning, and I was feeling very passionate about it. But from a transurfing perspective, I'm curious to know your take on it, you guys. Where do you think the limits lie? Getting in and doing the thing. Are transurfers, does this sound counterintuitive to the transurfing mindset? So Xavier, let me hear your thoughts first. I'm curious as a non-American. Obviously Australia deals with its fair share of racism and racial tension as well, but I'm curious to hear your perspective on this from a perspective of not being a US citizen.
Okay, well, hello world from the Southern Hemisphere, which is not a stranger to these racial issues, not by a long shot. The cruel reality of Australia is that when the Europeans first came, colonized, or in some mindsets invaded the Australian subcontinent, they did a pretty thorough job of exterminating the native population. So the racial problem has never been as great as it has been in the United States for purely historical reasons and for purely savage historical reasons. My understanding is that the Afro-American population of the United States is about what, 12% of the population? Is that correct?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Somewhere around there. Australia is lucky to push 1.5 to 2%. And that was before. So basically the Europeans almost entirely eliminated the native populations, the indigenous populations. So there simply weren't enough people to be a problem from the European perspective. Same thing happened in Argentina, the country of my birth and my mother's birth. In fact, there was a very interesting situation a few years ago where on a particularly popular variety show in Australia, there was a sketch done by a group of people in blackface. That became quite a controversial thing around the world. And in fact, one of my mother's friends in Argentina commented that she wasn't aware that Australians were so racist. I took rather umbrage about that because the vast majority of people I know personally aren't particularly racist and don't particularly care. However, I took umbrage because I also knew the history of Argentina and knew that the Argentinian Europeans had quite efficiently almost entirely wiped out the indigenous populations of Argentina. And in fact, this is the whole history of South America as well. So it's not an easy issue. Just in order to satisfy the people out there of my bona fides, I recently had my genetics tested, and it turns out that I'm pretty much from everywhere. I have European ancestry, I have French, British, Celtic, I have Scandinavians in there because of the Vikings. I am 10% Basque. I also have a large dollop of native South American, particularly Guarani Paraguayan, because my mother's father was a Guarani Indian, or at least half Guarani Indian. And I also have traces of subtropical African. So I think that maybe as recently as maybe 5 generations back, I had ancestors who were slaves who had been taken from Africa to work on the plantations in Brazil. And through that, somehow this great, amazing amalgam of people all coalesced into yours truly. So when I look at this and I think, well, I have ancestors who were both the exploiters and the exploited. I have ancestors who were both the killers and the killed. I have slave owners and the slaves. They all coalesced to create this current body that this current spiritual being is focused in. So the question of identity for me is a bit irrelevant, personally. I don't identify with the South American Indian in me any more than I identify with my Welsh ancestors. Watercane is a Welsh name, after all, ultimately. So to me, if you want to look at things from a colorblind point of view, pretty much if you're made up of many colors, it becomes an irrelevant topic. So it's hard for me to get myself into the mindset of people who identify with any particular tradition or any particular tribe or any particular way of identifying self with a group.
You mean a pendulum?
Anything is a pendulum. If even even an individual is a pendulum, if that individual is powerful enough in their influence.
A tribal
Pendulums and,
pendulum?
sorry?
A tribal pendulum?
A tribal pendulum is certainly a very powerful one. And there are people who decide, for whatever reason, that they are going to identify with that tribal pendulum. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If I look at a Maori who has tattooed the lower part of their chin, their chin and upper lip with those wonderful tattoos, they're making a statement. I am Maori. I am part of a tradition that goes back centuries. This is where my identity is. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with tribal identity in and of itself. The problem begins when tribal identity becomes a pretext to create conflict, exploitation, or racism, which I would define as negatively discriminating on the grounds of genetic background. This takes a little bit away from the question, the original question, what is reality transurfing? But I just thought I wanted to establish there, then and there, that this is coming from my perspective, which is built on centuries of an extremely diverse genetic and cultural background, not any single part of which I overly identify with.
Well, I want to say something quickly on that, because I actually find this a little fascinating that you brought this up. So I gave this seminar a couple years ago on the Tufte book when it just came out, and the seminar was on the center screen, but I polled, and this is going to be available. I actually just read this yesterday, so it's kind of fascinating that it's coming full circle like this. I read it yesterday in 10 different parts. It took me about 2 days to give the seminar, but I broke it down into 10 different parts and I read them for the YouTube channel. And when I was building the seminar out, I started pulling G.I. Gurdjieff's ideas about identification and the center screen, or the center world as he referred to it as, and self-remembering, which all sort of has to do with, well, obviously the identification is, or dealing or managing your level of identification is directly correlates really to the outer screen. I mean, when we are overtly identified with anything, this is when we lose our consciousness, right? Because we are so focused on the thing that we forget the self. We actually forget the self. And the self-remembering technique from G.I. Gurdjieff is the same thing, just in the other direction. It's remembering the self to keep you away from being overtly identified with something. So I think this is, and I'm not trying to insinuate here that people that are identified are lacking consciousness. Well, I mean, I guess in a way that I am. Obviously,
You've got to be really, you're going to have to be really careful with your wording here, Renee, because it's an extremely sensitive topic, and you don't want to give the impression that you think that people who identify with a particular tribal or religious or political or whatever stance are somehow less conscious. You can actually make a very conscious decision to make that identification. However, that doesn't exclude the possibility that you can also make a very unconscious, unaware identification.
Well, I think that it's not just a group of people or some people. I think we are all doing this. This is the human dilemma, right? Is self-awareness and maintaining a sense of self without getting completely lost into either our inner world or our outer world. What I'm talking about here, it's not who's doing it or even how much. It's what are the stakes? You know, what are the stakes for doing it? And
what's the price you're paying?
What's the price you're paying? And is there a way, and this is exactly what my video is about today, is there a way that something can shift without going to that place for all of us, right? It is a collective issue because everybody is sort of in it together, regardless of, you know, what side you're on. We're all challenged by this challenge, right? It is a challenge, and we're all sort of dealing with it from one of the two places where we shouldn't be dealing with it.
There are two things that I wanted to mention. One is to refer people back, in case they didn't see the other podcast, about that video with the two girls talking psychically to each other.
Yes.
That video was
Amazing.
entirely about this. That video was entirely about this issue. It was, oh, what's the weirdest experience you ever had? Well, incarnating on Earth. Why was that weird? Well, because you forgot who you really are.
Yes.
And I think that is all that, from a spiritual point of view, that's a major challenge to all of us. We are actors who have become so enmeshed in our roles that we forget that we're actors. We forget that we are playing a role. The more, I would say, detached point of view would be to remember that you are playing a role, but also to be able at the same time to dive deep into that role in order to play it convincingly. It's difficult to be on stage as an actor playing a role while at the same time you're thinking of whether or not you left the gas on at home.
Yes, and the other thing I'm thinking is that make sure that the role you're playing is part of a script that you, like, you know, if somebody came to me and said, you know, hey, Renee, would you come down to the local, you know, art house theater and play this role? And it was something that I wasn't feeling like I could, you know, I mean, this isn't really the best analogy, but if something isn't going to benefit me long-term, or a cause or a movement or a mind, you know, if something is not there in the right way, do I want to play that part? And that script really is what it boils down to. I mean, I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but what I'm saying here is
within that point of view, within that framework, within that metaphor, you could say, does this actor want to take on a role that will harm their career?
exactly.
The career being the spiritual self, the higher self, the self that has the broader, bigger agenda about growth, expansion, increasing the repertoire, whatever that might be.
Yes, that's what it boils down to, is yes.
Okay, so having said that, we're in a better position to answer the original question, which was, what is reality transurfing?
What's reality transurfing got to do with it?
Yeah, okay. So from my point of view, here it goes. Reality transurfing is a morally and ethically neutral set of techniques to facilitate the conscious choosing of an experience of reality for an individual consciousness.
Yes.
I don't think I can say that again without, I hope you can write that down. But that's basically what it is. It's morally and ethically neutral. Whether you choose reality transurfing to take over the world, or whether you use reality transurfing to retreat to a monastery and live in a cell for the rest of your earthly incarnation, is entirely up to you. But it is morally and ethically neutral. It's like electricity. It's like writing. Writing is neutral. You can choose to write the most inspiring piece of poetry ever written, or the most beautiful song, or you can write Mein Kampf. The writing itself is not the issue. Transurfing itself is simply a set of techniques and tools to facilitate the conscious choosing of the experience of reality for an individual consciousness. So this particular individual consciousness has, throughout its current incarnation, used reality surfing techniques and other reality awakening techniques in order to have a better life than the one he was originally assigned in terms of what he decided was a better life. The same could be said for you, Renee. You had a sucky childhood and a crap upbringing, and you pulled yourself out of, dare I say it, trailer trashdom to the position you're in today.
Yes.
I don't know John's story. He might have had an easier ride, but he might have had his own challenges, as we all do. And I can't speak for everybody out there watching this video. We all have our individual set of challenges. Reality Transurfing merely offers a variety of different ways of practices that will take you from one live stream to another live stream that will be better for you in terms that you define as better for yourself. Having said that, everybody is where they are at the moment, where they're at. So if they're at a place where they choose to take a stance on a particular position, they have to be aware that once they take a stance on a particular position, they are saying yes to playing a particular role.
With the pendulum, yeah.
With a pendulum or without, because they might create their own pendulum.
Yes.
Because everything can be a pendulum, including an individual. So if you then decide then, okay, I'm going to take this position, then you can use reality transurfing techniques or law of attraction or whatever it is that works for you, and then use those techniques in order to move into a stream of reality which reflects the stance that you've taken. But reality transurfing has nothing to say about the position that you take.
No, of course not. I guess what my sort of burning question is am I just getting caught up in a pendulum by taking a stance? Did the pendulum somehow trigger me emotionally? Because I do actually feel for the racial issues that are going on here. I have, for the most part, stayed out of politics and anything of this nature for the last 5 years, simply because of my philosophical beliefs. But when I saw certain things recently, I did get triggered emotionally because, and I think maybe some of it has to do with my upbringing. Like
Sure.
I know what it's like to, even though I'm white in my own way, I know what it's like to be born on the bottom rung. You know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely. But to answer your burning question, then the moment that you take a stand on anything, the moment it's taking a stand is taking a commitment to a particular value system, a particular position, right? The moment that you do that, you are automatically going to be involved in some pendulum somewhere. Your concern that you are involved in that you have bought into a pendulum is perfectly a valid one, but I would actually say it's also irrelevant, because unless you experience a pendulum, unless you dive deep into that stream, you won't know how you are going to react to it. Because you can take a stance and you can blah, blah, and you can say things. But if you're just going to stand back and say things, that could just degenerate into virtue signaling and mental masturbation. Because it's easy, talk is cheap. which is
Totally.
ironic considering what we're doing.
Yes.
But
Well, that was my dilemma. That was my absolute dilemma. I'm like, okay, so either I'm going to, so I filmed the video yesterday, the night before I had the dream, and I woke up in the morning and I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. You know, that was my initial thought, was like, oh, I'm not going to go on my YouTube channel and talk about that. That's a massive pendulum right now, and I'm not going to do that. And then I had this very, very unsettling feeling after I declared that to myself, that I was just going to push that dream aside and not do it. And I was like, oh my God, that does not feel right. And now I'm in the business of paying attention to the inner state of comfort or discomfort, right? So I'm like, okay, so just play this out mentally, what it would be like to feed this pendulum, you know, and get involved, even though you view it as a pendulum, but your heart obviously is saying something about, you know, you saying something. And it's all very confusing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I guess I'm sort of boiling it down to the root of what it is I'm wondering. Do you believe that your heart would tell you to get involved with a pendulum that ultimately was not good for you?
I do not believe that your heart would lead you to a pendulum that would ultimately do that. And this goes on to another thing that we were going to discuss, which is the fourth screen. In reality transurfing, we have this idea of what's happening in the external world is the outer screen. What is happening in your internal dialogue based on conditioning, history, is called the inner screen. But I look at the inner screen as your unexamined script, right? This is the script that is unexamined. The things that are operating subconsciously, things that you haven't looked at, that you've gone on automatic because they've served you or because you simply haven't looked, right? Then there's the center screen, which is that point of middling awareness, where you say, okay, I'm aware of what's going out in the outer world. I'm aware of what's going on in the inner world, and I'm taking I'm staying in a center place of neutrality, right? Of awareness of what is going on both outside and inside, and just looking at that. The center screen is actually simply a place of neutrality.
Yes, it is. Yes.
It is, because it's from that place. It's a bit like being calm enough to shut up.
Yes.
That's the center screen. To shut up what's going on outside and to shut up what's going on inside, and to shut up. That's the center screen. But it's ultimately like putting the gear stick in neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And putting the brakes on and just saying, hold, stop the world just for a second while I look at this and observe. The fourth screen is the heart, mind, spiritual alignment. The fourth screen is what happens once you have gone beyond neutrality into looking at your deeper self. I would argue that what you experienced this morning was, oh no, my current understanding of transurfing ideology tells me not to be involved in the screen. But that's a measure of your current understanding of the transurfing ideology, which I do not believe was an original intention of transurfing.
Yeah.
What I think was the message was just be aware. And then you went into automatically a center screen that took you, because you've done this so often, automatically to your heart, soul, mind alignment. And I would argue then that your heart, soul, mind alignment caused you to inspired action and to make the video where you took a stance on declaring your position as it is at the moment. And that, because of that alignment is therefore congruent with your higher self speaking through you. And I would argue that that is the fourth screen.
Fascinating. Have you read anything before? Is there any other school of thought or philosophy that talks about something like that?
The thing about everything that I say is as a result of decades of looking into this sort of stuff and also thinking about it for myself. Like anything else, I'm just another guy with a bunch of ideas. And it's up to everybody listening to decide whether or not this particular guy with a bunch of ideas has anything worth listening to, and to be open-minded and hearted enough to give it a shot. If what I'm saying sounds like complete crap, then throw it out and look for something else. I'm not here to proselytize any particular position other than that of alignment and awareness.
Yeah.
Reality transurfing is simply a set of powerful tools to achieve that alignment of awareness. But the inner guidance that comes from the higher self is as individual as an individual consciousness. So all I can...
No, go ahead,
Sorry?
go ahead.
So all I can say is that if you can achieve that center screen first, which is the training wheels, the primary or elementary school position, then you go into high school, which is alignment. Ultimately, you get to university, and I would argue that university is every waking moment and sleeping moment in full alignment with your higher self. And I would say that postgrad is the position where you begin the first steps into, for want of a better word, I would call godhood, where you are so free and so powerful in your capacity to choose the reality stream that you're in, that you can go anywhere and do anything. I think I'm a few lifetimes away from that still, but that's okay. I don't mind being in junior high school on this matter, because being in junior high school on this matter is a hell of an improvement of where I started off, which was in preschool.
I feel
So
that.
reality transurfing is neutral. It is like writing. It has nothing to say on what position you choose. But once you choose your position, reality transurfing says, having chosen your position, having chosen your stance, having chosen where you stand on something, be aware that there will be a price for playing that role. Be
Yes.
aware that in playing that role, you might forget yourself. You might slip from center screen into outer and inner, fluctuating back and forth, and you might lose sight of that alignment, which is probably a slightly better way of being in the world, which aligns the heart, mind, and body and the higher self to truly inspired action. Like, for example, the little dog that just walked. I don't think you can see him. He doesn't question. He doesn't go into all of these problems in his head. He doesn't have philosophical issues. He just feels an impulse and goes with it. He's already aligned. Of course, he's a dog, so his repertoire isn't as broad as a human repertoire. Humans have paid the price, or maybe put a better way, consciousness has paid a price in incarnating as human in order to confront these very issues, in order to find its way out of the morass of a bazillion philosophies, a bazillion points of view, a bazillion different ways of being in the world that have evolved or have been part of human history since the first almost human person woke up about 250,000 years ago and said, ooh, maybe if I rub these sticks together, I'll make fire.
Yes.
We're all
sometimes those things collide.
Yeah, exactly. We're part of a bigger story. And
Yes.
even the human experience is only a tiny, tiny sliver of the pie that is reality. There are realities that have...
I think that's why sorry to cut you off, but I think that's why I was challenged yesterday morning, is because you know, the kind of stuff I'm into. I showed you that Martin Butler stuff that makes you seem like you're just a speck of dust that is around for a brief you know, just, yeah. So for me to narrow my focus into an actual world issue, you know, is like, there's consciousness is complex, right? I mean, we have an infinite number of different perspectives we can take, down to, you know, thinking that, you know, you did something in this moment wrong and your whole world's going to end, to zooming all the way out and realizing that humanity is probably not even going to be around much longer in the cosmic scheme of things, right?
Certainly,
So it's like,
not.
where it's like taking a camera and saying, I'm going to go out and shoot some pictures, and you're just constantly zooming in and zooming out and zooming in and zooming out. It's like, where is the, I guess, finding the place where it feels like it's comfortable, rather than being all the way out. I mean, that's an extreme, and being all the way in is not, that doesn't serve people, you know?
Well, no, but you don't know whether it does or not, because you don't know their story. You don't know where they're at. You don't know what their higher self or their soul, or whatever you want to call it, needs to experience or wants to experience in that moment. You can only answer that question for yourself. And I want to challenge you right now, because you said in the video about a way out of racism that we need to do this collectively. We don't have to do this collectively at all. We do it as individuals. We make individual decisions about where we stand on something and what, if any, action we're going to take. All that reality transurfing says is, at least let that action and those thoughts and those feelings be inspired action and thought and feelings. And you're not going to get that from being entirely in the outer screen or in the inner screen. And you're not even really going to get it in the center screen, but you're not going to get to the fourth screen, which is that wonderful alignment, unless you go center screen first.
Yeah.
And then as individuals, we each decide the stream from the space of variations that we are going to be in. The world in which people are rioting in the streets and burning down businesses, trashing cars, etc., will continue to exist, whether you, Renee Garcia, whether you, John Ludwig, whether I, Xavier Waterkane, or anybody else watching this video. It's going to continue to exist because the consciousnesses that want to or need to experience that stream of reality, or that subset of streams of reality, each one of those people in those realities is experiencing their own experience. It is a completely unique point of view. No two consciousness experience the same universe.
Yes.
So as individuals, we need to decide which universe do we want to live in.
Yes.
Or
well,
which
Jonathan's
dream.
take on it. I'm curious to hear what and I just realized, Jonathan, I didn't introduce you. I don't think I did.
That's okay. I do have to leave in like 15 minutes.
Okay,
So,
cool.
yeah, I didn't know how long this was going to run. Last time it went a couple hours.
No. We'll try to wrap this one up under 6 hours.
Yeah, so I told you where I was right before coming here. So I got lectured as far as what you're supposed to be allowed to say, and what privileges. I know all this stuff. If you imagine a world with no racism, I believe everybody will be happy, because there will be abundance, there will be no need, there'll be no hunger, there will be no need for crime, there will be no need to show dominance. So if you imagine yourself at the end where everybody's happy, there's no racism, there can't be racism if everybody's happy. The way to solve it is to teach everybody how to transurf, teach everybody how to get to the happy place, and it all goes away. That's kind
So
of,
you think
that's my take on it.
you think it's our biggest problem then, is what you're saying?
We keep trying to solve the problem the same way, and that's not going to work. You know, like, oh, sure, let's raise awareness. Well, I mean, that's what history is. History tells you all these things. Maybe it's colored, maybe it's not necessarily the way it happened, but you can see somebody's perception of the way things happen in the past, and they keep happening over and over again. You know, they say history never repeats, but it does a damn good job of rhyming. And, you know, this stuff has happened over and over. In my lifetime, it's happened many times already. And we keep trying to resolve it the same way. That's not going to solve anything. I got lectured by my daughters this morning, right before coming here. It's our fault that things are the way they are. And I said, I don't agree with that. I may not be doing enough, but that doesn't mean it's my fault. And I'm not looking to point fingers or anything like that. Everybody needs to fix it all together. You can't just,
Yes, I agree.
you can't just go and say, like, you need to support this or you need to support that. I don't think that's going to solve anything. That's what we've been doing forever. It doesn't work.
We need to all
Saying that there's racial injustice and saying, hey, racial injustice exists, does not solve it.
Yes. Well, I guess maybe you know, I have a pretty dire standpoint on homelessness here, you know, on the West Coast. It is really, really, really bad. And I have lived in places, I lived in downtown Los Angeles for 10 years where there was on average 7,500 tents in a 30-block radius in downtown Los Angeles. It was quite a substantial problem. And I've thought about this thing so much, and I finally worked myself up into a place where I formed the belief that there are certain issues that there is simply not an answer. You know? And I don't know if that's just my way of sort of throwing my hands up in the air, or if that's real. Do you believe that there maybe is a challenge or a problem that it could exist? A problem could exist that does not have a solution, or at least an accessible one.
I think you kind of answered it by saying an accessible one. Everything's based on what you know. We just don't know enough yet. You know, I asked them, why don't you guys do some research and find a country that has solved this problem anytime in history, and then let's do what they did.
Yes.
You know, we've been around. Humans have been around for a while. I mean, maybe not in the scheme of the universe, but we've been around for a few hundred, for at least 100,000 years. Maybe a lot more. Who knows? But let's say we've been around for 100,000 years. I think some civilization might have figured it out. You know, why can't we just do that?
Interesting. Well, maybe we move it on to a more positive note and play my little find the advantage game. Did I tell you about that, Jonathan?
No, but it sounds like fun.
Okay. So I have a few things that I'm curious if you guys can just sort of off the cuff, not thinking about it very long, try to find the advantage in these. They're very mundane things. You guys are going to laugh. You're going to be like, oh man, this is her problems. How pathetic. But these are three things that have popped up in the last 12 hours that I'm like, okay, what's the advantage? So the night before last, I had a headache and I took 4 ibuprofen. Right before bed, I didn't drink a full glass of water. And I think one of them got stuck going down, and it must have burned a little ulcer in me, because now it hurts really, really bad in there. And it seems like it's getting worse, and I can actually feel it throbbing. So what is the advantage in that? What is the advantage in an ulcer?
Start with a headache. Start with the headache.
What do you mean?
Why do you have a headache?
I think it's very, very hot here right now. I probably got a little dehydrated. Well, transurfing teaches us that there's an advantage to everything.
So you both got a headache and got a ibuprofen stuck in your throat because you didn't drink enough water. What do you think? What do you think you're supposed to learn? If two times you're being told to drink water and you don't, maybe you should listen.
That's good. Yes, I'm usually very hydrated, so I know Xavier here is shaking his head. He's like, "Oh my God, I can't even believe I'm going to entertain this." So okay,
I cannot improve on what Jod said. You start with the headache. Why did you set up the headache in the first place? Because everything, if you're looking at the whole transurfing modality, the point of view is that you're not. Nothing that happens to you from a place that is outside of yourself. You start with the self. You're always starting with where are you coming from energetically? Where are you coming from in your current state of consciousness? Your state of consciousness told you, okay, I need to set up something. I will set up a headache. Okay, now what happens? Oh, I have a headache because I didn't drink enough. Okay, but I'm still not going to drink enough. I'm going to take these ibuprofens without water.
Oh my God. I can't believe I just completely overrode exactly what you guys are saying. I didn't even realize it.
What do you mean overrode?
Like, I didn't think this morning when I'm like, oh my God, what's that feeling? Why am I feeling like that? And then I started telling Eric, and he's like, hey, maybe the ibuprofen burn an ulcer. And I'm like, God, that sucks. Maybe I should go. I didn't even for a second think that it was because of
was that the same feeling that told you to do the racist video?
Yes, exactly.
So that whole video came from you not drinking enough water.
Oh no, I'm totally off. I've gone off the rails, guys.
Not necessarily, because think of the chain of causality. Headache, ibuprofen, burning a hole in your esophagus, being disrupted. It's a very squirrely way of getting to a video, which then leads to a commentary that I make and a whole bunch of other people made about that video, because I actually I saw more feedback from that video than you'd done for practically any other you'd ever done. 63 comments and counting. And I thought, and all of this has led to this discussion now. It is possible that the headache was a domino that fell onto another domino, ibuprofen, domino, having an existential crisis about what is transurfing, domino, make a video, domino, have this discussion, which will possibly lead to a whole bunch of other dominoes, which are the people that are watching this and saying, you know what? Some of what they're saying is making sense. Why don't I try it? Why don't I imagine a better world? Why don't I just sit here and just imagine it? All that the world is showing you at the moment, with all these riots and all of that stuff, which incidentally ain't happening here, not our problem. We got our own problems, right? We got our own problems. But the point is, all of this stuff is happening. It's simply an opportunity to practice the techniques. Okay, this is what's being presented in the mirror. Do what you normally do with the mirror. Shut your eyes, project onto the screen a better frame. The streets are now calm. The universes in which people are writing will continue to exist, but not in your reality, not in your stream, not in your reality that you've taken from this infinite space of variations. You transurf your way out of the storm. The storm continues to exist. There are universes in which World War II ended in a hot war rather than a cold war, and there are an infinite number of planet Earths that are now nuclear wastelands because the consciousnesses in those realities chose to experience that.
Love it. Okay, I'm going to give you another one.
What?
I'm going to give you guys another one. I got to hear it.
Have those been realized? Are you saying that they've been realized, or are you saying they're possibilities?
I'm saying that they're realized for the consciousness that we've realized. The only difference between a possibility and a realization is that a consciousness is involved in experiencing it. Might not be my consciousness or yours. It's self-evident that they're not my consciousness and your consciousness because we're not living in those universes. But they're there. The library books are still on the shelf. The DVDs are still on the shelf. The Akashic records are still there. They're still there. But I personally, you, Renee, everybody watching this, when none of us are living in any of those universes, that doesn't preclude the possibility that there are consciousnesses who are and who are experiencing it even as we speak. It's a big universe. It is infinite. There are implications to keep rattling on and using the word infinite. Infinite, infinite, infinite means infinite. Get your head around that.
So is there only one infinite universe?
That's a lovely, isn't that a lovely philosophical concept? Yes. Yes, because I wouldn't call it a universe. I would call it an omniverse, meaning a verse of all verses in all the poems that could ever be written of reality.
Okay, you guys ready for another one?
Yep.
My little wiener dog got a double ear infection, they think from swimming. And he's walking around the house, shaking his head. I took him to the vet yesterday and they put him on all sorts of medication. And it's definitely bringing down my vibe here at the house just because he's suffering so much. So where's the advantage in that one?
Again, it's a trigger, isn't it? It's an opportunity for you to grow in consciousness. Your little wiener dog, what's his name? Baba. Okay. So instead of looking at Baba and thinking, oh, you're so little sticky wicky.
Yes, which is exactly what I'm doing all day long.
Oh yes, I've got that film running through my brain right now. So, yes. And that might feel good for about 5 minutes because you're demonstrating how much you love Baba Wubu. But the thing is that the best favor you can do to Baba is to say, okay, Baba, I refuse to continue to reinforce this image of you as a sick puppy wuppy. I am going to take advantage of this situation to reframe you. And this comes from the Neville Goddard stuff, where you're actually framing for another. You're frailing. Isn't that called frailing?
Well, not exactly, but kind of. It's kind of, yeah.
Okay, but instead of doing it for yourself, you're now doing it for another. Yes. What you're doing then is you're creating a vibration that invites Baba to enter into that stream of reality with you.
Love it. Okay. Oh my God.
So instead of, again, there is an advantage here. There was a gift in this for you. Baba getting sick. Oh, bad. Oh, no, but gucci. All right, fine. You get past the gucci stage and you transcend that and you go into, I see you healthy. I see you happy. I create a frame in which you and I are having a really happy time together and you're just bursting with health and I'm happy and you're happy and I'm just going to stay in that frame. I'm staying in that frame. I raise my vibration through that frame until eventually it shows up.
Yes, I got a funny joke. When you're doing that to somebody else, you say, I see you and I see your reality, right? You just do it for somebody else, exactly. You know?
So you're just doing it.
Yeah, and then you position to the best of your ability that opportunity for them to join that version of reality with you. What do you think, Jonathan?
I mean,
it's good stuff. I love it.
I've never used a technique like that on a dog before. It's a lot easier to do it, to make suggestions to people, to suggest that they transurf their way to something better or kind of correct their thoughts so that they attract what they want. But as far as the dog goes, it could just be that maybe you need to pay more attention to your dog.
Yep. That
Like,
might be it. Okay,
have you felt like you're neglecting your dog?
Well, I would say that I felt very neglectful yesterday when I went into the vet. I just felt like, because the vet said, has he had any ear infections before? And I said, no, but I said, he really took up swimming this summer. He's been swimming a lot. And she was like, oh yeah, well, you know, you got to watch out for ear infections if you're letting your dog swim. And I was just like, oh my God, it didn't even dawn on me. And she said, yeah, I've got 2 golden retrievers and I don't let them swim just for these exact reasons. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm a bad dog mom, you know?
No, you're not bad. If your dog loves to swim,
He
this
really
is
loved
really what this is a wake-up call for you to learn how to take care of your dog that loves to swim.
Well, he can't swim
like,
anymore. She said it's probably a good idea to not let him swim anymore. So
Then it's a
They
wake
haven't-
up call to then it's a wake up call for you to take more responsibility for the stream of reality that you're choosing by framing yourself and Bubba having a lovely time when he was really lovely and healthy. That's it. That's your
Yep.
wake up call.
that's it. That's it. That's exactly it. Okay, one more before we wind it down and Jonathan has to go. 105 degrees outside and my air conditioner just breaks. And it's like 90 something inside the house right now. So where's the advantage in that?
Your air conditioner was going to blow up, and that just prevented it from happening.
Oh, so
You
it
don't
could
know
have
what
cost me a lot of money.
you don't know what was going to come next.
Well, actually, I had the air conditioning unit serviced this morning for
Mhm.
their biannual service, and she did something to it, and it broke.
Oh, so is it covered by your warranty then?
Well, I don't know because I've been on the call while she came. I was on the call, so I will find out the details when I get off.
There is a
You probably don't know
general,
the advantage yet.
okay, well, the one possible advantage is, like John said, you might have dodged a bullet.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you should celebrate the fact that if you had let that thing go on for much longer unattended, it might have blown up, it might have caught fire, you might have come home one day and found that your house was in cinders because you had neglected this part. Look, you're talking to a personality that barely has any interaction with the physical world at all. So I find that if there's going to be something that shows up in the physical world, it's going to be saying, Exy, you're just really going to have to look at this. I know you don't like to. I know that you'd rather live in your cloud cuckoo castle in the air of theoretical constructs. But right now, you just got to clean the toilet because that's what you got to do.
Yes.
Right now, you just got to do basic maintenance, which is, but knowing that I simplify my physical life as much as possible. Nevertheless, I can't avoid everything. And yet, okay, dodged a bullet. That's one possible advantage. You don't know whether the person whether as a result of the decisions that you've made today regarding the air conditioner, you didn't do something that you otherwise would have done that might have created a disadvantage for you. There are so many possible explanations, but what I'm getting out of all of these is this: there's an advantage to everything. There is a way of reframing any narrative so that it turns into something good for you. And then that's what you work with. And that's why these things come upon us. Okay, it looks like trouble, but I'm not going to reinforce trouble by thinking I'm in trouble, I'm in trouble, I'm in trouble. This is a bad thing. This is a bad thing. I'm in trouble. Oh, doggy sick, air conditioning, esophagus ulcer. Oh, it's all falling apart. Oh my God, I'm just going to bury it. And then you go into a downward spiral into which you end up burying your head.
I've already spiraled.
Time to spiral out.
I mean, there's a pattern here, which I'm surprised you haven't picked up on, but
He's too close to it.
Did all of these happen in a short time span?
Yes, all of them have happened in the last 12 hours.
So,
No. I'm sorry. Yesterday, it's been about 24 hours now.
So if you could say that they were all giving you the same message, what would that message be? Like, what is the general thing that they're all telling you that you're not doing?
Neglect.
Yes.
Yeah, you got to take care of your shit.
Neglect, because I have been putting a tremendous amount of time into my
So
transfer.
maybe the advantage is that there's something else you're neglecting that you need to take care of before something bad happens, or something you perceive as being bad happens, or you don't want it to happen. That you there may be something you're neglecting that's in the back of your mind right now, and you've been thinking about it, and it's just weighing on you.
Yes.
Or you're perilously close to putting so much attention on the transurfing that you're neglecting other parts of your life, and that you're perilously close to creating a condition of, what is it when you put too much energy in something? I keep forgetting the terminology.
Excess potential.
Yes, thank you, John. Excess potential.
I'm new to this.
Wow. Oh
right?
my gosh.
And if you need to just step back and give the thing a little bit of a breather and just let the thing roll a bit while you attend to other parts of your life that need attending to. Because believe me, that if you are going out in the world and you're promulgating all of these ideas and you're taking this stance on being the representative of transurfing, people are going to look at your crap. And if you ain't got it together, girl, you're not going to have much credibility. So your credibility depends on your either having it together, at least enough, or your credibility will depend on your capacity to admit that you don't have it all together, but that you still have interesting ideas that people should perhaps entertain and practice and listen to. Either way, you don't seek advice from somebody who is playing the game of life worse than you are.
Yes. Oh, I totally, believe me. I understand that one. And that is a constant, my higher self is leading me in the right direction for sure, because I know that I need to embody that person of myself if I'm attempting to lead others to that version.
Then look at this 24-hour period of one sideswipe after another as your higher talking to you and say, well, she didn't listen to me when I was trying to whisper in her ear and said, you really need to look after your dog, or you really need to look at that air conditioner, or you really need to look at that. Look at your general health and hydration.
Wait. In all fairness, the air conditioning happened because of a maintenance I scheduled. So I'm off the hook on that one. The dog?
Not necessarily, because think of what the dominoes that fell as a result of that. Your higher self is much smarter than you are.
I like that.
So you don't know
how. Why are you separating the two?
Huh?
I just find it. I find it funny. I find it funny that you say that your higher self is smarter than you are, because I don't really see that there's any difference.
You're already on your way to identifying.
No.
Which is excellent.
I don't know about that. I understand what my ego is, and I understand what its job it was supposed to be, and how to, pretty much keep its mouth shut. It's very easy to tell when it's talking. It wants to be right. Like, this is why this won't work. You've never tried that before. I don't care. It sounds stupid. Don't do that. It's very easy to tell when that's talking, and it's very easy to tell when your higher self is talking, because it's authoritative, and it's I can't, at this point, it's just me thinking. I don't distinguish between, the old me that was trying to survive against, a saber-toothed tiger versus the new me that's just trying to get what I want out of life.
In the end,
Yes, I hear that.
in the end, you could play the game of second guessing what the higher self wants forever. But I think maybe when you come back to what does the heart want and what is your heart leading to, what would love do now? That's a lovely thing to ask yourself. All of this comes down to you're having an experience. The opportunity is there to reframe it into a better narrative and see the advantage of it. And whatever the story you tell yourself, suck it and see.
Yeah, if that's what you choose to do.
If that's what you choose to do.
Some people like to be
Yes,
miserable too,
absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
sure.
another choice.
Sure.
They revel in
Yep.
it.
Absolutely. Or they just wouldn't, they just don't want to choose something else.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know people that, I could help them, and I've said, consider trying these things, and they don't want to do it because they get so much pleasure out of the attention they get from complaining that they don't want to give that up.
Yeah, you sell yourself out for a really cheap reward. But hey, if that's what you want, that's what you want.
Well, it's sort of a self-fulfilling one, because if you're complaining, you're going to get plenty to complain about. It's almost like a drug for them. They get addicted to it.
So maybe
And it's easy to do, and it's easy to get the paraphernalia for the drug, right?
Yeah, just go on Facebook, right?
Yeah, exactly.
so if you're going to so go for a better quality of drug. Go for the drug that's affirming. Go for the drug that is positive and life enhancing. Go for that one. See what that one tastes like. Get addicted to being functional.
Well, I think that a lot of people just, they don't, it's like the thing that happens to us when we decide we want to adopt a new healthy habit or go to the gym or start eating better. At first, it's just super painful, right? Because you don't see any benefit, right? It takes a while for the benefit to kick in.
Yes,
So
you have to go through a withdrawal of your old drug.
Yeah, totally. And most people
You have to convince yourself.
Yeah, and yes, you have to convince yourself.
Everything about life is convincing yourself to believe in something. So that's just another thing that you're trying to. You could say that the diet's working. You could say that, but you could also say that you believe that it's helping you.
Yes.
And that's why you're losing weight.
Yes. Well, this one was a good one, guys. I like that we stayed on track with the stuff, and I think it turned into a little bit of a roast on me at the end there, but I'm cool with that. Transurfing roast. Oh my God, that's an awesome idea for a show. A transurfing roast, just rip someone apart and how they've created a reality for themselves. That actually sounds kind of fun.
It sounds actually very therapeutic.
Yeah, as long as the person's there.
Consenting to.
Yeah, otherwise you're just judging.
Yes, exactly. The other person has to be able and willing to accept, or it's not going to be. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. And yeah, look for more of these. If you guys are down to do some more, we'll definitely do them. And yes, maybe if you would like to join this call, comment below, and maybe you can join us on the next one. And thank you so much.
How would they do that, Renee? What mechanism?
Just comment below. Hey, can I be on the next one? I don't know. Or email me, Renee@transurfing.us. Yeah, but I check all the comments. So if you would like to, if you would like to be on this next one, just comment below or email me. And yeah, we'll schedule another one. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. And happy transurfing and good luck choosing your pendulums. Bye.
Pendulum. Bye.
Penduli.
Bye.